Hey guys, the question I want to answer in today's video is, how much more do you spend on maintenance when you own a diesel HD truck versus a gas HD truck? Now, this exact question was raised repeatedly in a previous video I published where I demonstrated that the diesel fuel savings are essentially negated based on the cost to upgrade to a diesel engine, that diesel premium. And so if you didn't catch that video, I'll put a card up above and a link in the description below. And guys, it's a little windy out today, so I apologize in advance for any background noise with the wind. But in that previous video, the question that was raised repeatedly in the comments was, what about diesel maintenance? How does that factor into the equation? Or worded differently, hey, you forgot about maintenance. The cost to maintain a diesel truck is significantly higher than gas. And so I want to say thank you, first of all, for all the comments. I try to read and interact with them as much as possible, as much as time permits. And I remember personally regarding the maintenance concerns, about 10 years ago when I bought my first HD diesel truck. It was a 2016 Ram with the Cummins. I had never owned a diesel truck before, and so I remember being told, or maybe I just heard from others, that the diesel trucks are significantly more expensive to maintain compared to their gas counterparts. And so I remember being a little bit apprehensive, going into that first purchase, just not knowing how expensive the maintenance would be. And then of course you've got, DEF, the diesel exhaust fluid, how much DEF would I go through, right? And certainly there's maintenance schedules for any vehicle that you buy. You can find them online, you can look through them, but it's not like the maintenance schedules show you the cost, because naturally that's going to vary based on whether you do it yourself or take it somewhere. And so all that to say, I can relate to all the questions raised, because I remember for myself personally, the diesel maintenance cost was a legitimate concern. Well, fast forward to the present, I've owned 3 diesel trucks since then, 2 Cummins and 1 Duramax. And looking back over my ownership of those 3 trucks, spoiler alert guys, I found that personally the diesel trucks weren't really that much more to maintain. I mean, they were indeed more expensive than gas trucks, no doubt. They had more line items to keep up with, but in the end, for me personally, I found that the diesel trucks, they really weren't that much more in terms of maintenance expenses compared to gas trucks. And so really in today's video, I want to share what that diesel maintenance looked like for me personally, mainly on my last Cummins, and just show you a sample of what those costs looked like, what the schedule that I used, what it looked like. And that way, if you're on the fence between gas and diesel, at least you've got a real owner's take on it, and then you can decide what's best for you. And yes, I do have another spreadsheet, but before I show it to you, let me disclose that the schedules you're about to see in my spreadsheet, they are not the official maintenance schedules. Again, my spreadsheet that I'm about to show you, it is not the official schedule from GM or Ram or Cummins for that matter. And I'll quickly put up some screen captures of the official GM and Ram maintenance schedules. And so if you want to pause the video and look through them, feel free to do so. But the spreadsheet I'm about to show you, it's more of a modified schedule that I use personally, both on my past Ram with the Cummins and now currently here on my GM with the L8T. And so again, don't follow my personal maintenance schedule, do your own research. Read your owner's manual first, and then determine what's best for your situation. I also want to point out that my schedules here in the spreadsheet, they've been simplified some. They certainly are not exhaustive. Rather, they just show the mainline items and really just help demonstrate where the gas and diesel trucks are different, to highlight those, those cost differences. But basically, as you can see, I'm using a 6-month or 6,000 mile interval between the 2 schedules. And again, do your own research, because what I'm about to show you here deviates from the official manufacturer schedules. Okay, so first let's look at the gas HD truck maintenance schedule. And for this one, I'm basing it on the GM L8T because, well, that's what I currently drive here. And like I said, I tend to favor a 6-month or 6,000 mile interval, because that just, most closely matches my habits. And it just makes it, easy for me to do the maintenance and keep up with it. I also will mention that I do prefer to do the maintenance myself, especially with the basic stuff, like the fluids and such. And so the costs that you're seeing right here are just the parts, no labor, since I'm doing it myself. But you can see the gas truck, it's very simple. There's just routine oil changes. And then about 4 years, I'll plan to do the transfer case fluid, the automatic transmission fluid. It's not quite the schedule that GM recommends, but that's what I plan to do, at least, right now. And of course, naturally, doing the work myself, it's not just about the cost savings, but it's also about time savings. I mean, if I go somewhere to have the maintenance done, I got to drive there, then I got to sit and wait. And so I just find it's a lot more efficient for my time to do the maintenance myself. But then also, I know the job is done properly. And, for me personally, I've just had a really mixed experience in the past taking vehicles to, a dealership or a service center where, things aren't always maybe done quite as nicely as I'd like them to be done. And so this way, I do it myself. I can make sure it's done properly. And it's just more efficient in general. And so you can see on my spreadsheet here on the gas truck, over the course of 5 years, I expect to spend about $775 in maintaining the truck. Of course, there's going to be other incidentals like tires or wiper fluid or even headlamp fluid. I'm kidding on that last one, by the way. So there's going to be some other costs, but I think they're going to be pretty similar for both trucks. And so really, again, I'm just trying to show the main line items here. Well, let's shift over here next to the diesel. And again, this one is based on my previous Cummins. It was the 6.7 liter, the high output model with the Ison transmission. Again, this is not the official Ram or official Cummins maintenance schedule. And I'll also point out that this diesel maintenance schedule here that I'm showing you is quite a bit different than the Duramax. So again, do your research. But on my Cummins diesel, you can see that I did oil changes once a year. Cummins says that you can do them every 15,000 miles or once a year. And so I did it really more based on time. And so technically I could go longer between oil changes on the Cummins compared to here on my current gas truck. Granted, the Cummins took more oil, 12 quarts to be exact, compared to 8 here on the LAT, but I could go longer between oil changes. They were less frequent. And so you can see there on the oil change and the filter, about $80 for all the materials, but I'm only doing that once a year instead of twice a year like I am here on the LAT. And really for me, the two big line items that were very different for me on the Cummins were the annual fuel filters you can see there, and then the DEF, the diesel exhaust fluid. The fuel filters, they're about $100 combined on the Cummins. It had 2 of them. So I did that annually, alongside the oil change. And then with the DEF, the diesel exhaust fluid, I was probably unladen about 60 to 70% of the time. I bought the Cummins because at the time I had a big 17,000 pound fifth wheel. And so I'd use the truck to tow that fifth wheel. But then during the week, I would use the truck essentially as a daily driver. And so concerning the DEF fluid there, I didn't go through as much, and really surprisingly, it only totaled to about $72 per year on the DEF fluid. I mean, you can buy it, in bulk and get discounts on it. So really for me, I found the DEF to be more of a nuisance just to keep up with, having fresh DEF on hand and then refilling the tank when you need to. So it really didn't turn out to be much on the DEF. Now, if you're going to be towing more, that's really where the diesel engine is going to consume the most DEF. And so, my numbers are going to be a little bit different for you if you're doing primarily just towing with the diesel. And then really the only other major difference on my Cummins was the transmission fluid. It needed to be changed at 2 years, and then at 4 years, the complete transmission filter assembly and everything had to be changed out. So, I mean, those are certainly more complex jobs compared to, your typical gas HD truck. But you can see there at the end of 5 years, I spent roughly $1,785 in maintenance costs on the diesel, which is about $1,000 more than the maintenance that I spent there on my gas truck, or I plan to spend at least on my gas truck. So really for me, the diesel was about $1,000 more compared to my current gas. And I think that's kind of surprising. I mean, if you take that $1,000 and you spread it across the 5 years, it's really only about $200 more per year. which, prior to owning a diesel truck, I had the impression that diesel trucks required, significantly more maintenance, right? Even to the point where I had in my mind that a diesel truck would be like a night and day difference when it comes to the maintenance costs. I mean, there's definitely more line items compared to the gas, but at the end of the day, the cost overall, it's really not that much higher. I mean, granted, I did the maintenance on the Cummins myself, and so I think that's certainly one factor that minimizes the difference between the diesel and the gas. I would imagine if I had taken the Cummins to the car dealership or a service center, then some of those costs could perhaps triple. In fact, if you're watching this, do me a favor. If you have a diesel truck and you've taken it recently to the car dealership or a service center for some of those line items in the spreadsheet, do me a favor and just comment below, chime in and let us know what are dealers and service centers charging for, basic things like an oil change, right? Or fuel filter change, some of those regular reoccurring maintenance costs. I think that would be very helpful to folks to get a bigger picture. And while we're talking about DIY versus taking it to a dealership or a service center, I will say that diesel engines are more complex than gas engines. Before I owned the previous diesels, I had never worked on diesels before, and I remember before I was comfortable doing basic things like oil changes on them or fuel filters, I would go out and watch, 2 or 3 different how-to videos online showing, step by step. And a lot of it was just learning the tips and tricks, different tools or different ways to make it more efficient, to do it, without making a mess, that sort of thing. And so once you watch those videos, there's so many of them out there, by the way, then you kind of learn the ins and outs and it becomes a lot easier. But I would compare that to, here on my gas truck here, and the oil change was so simple. You don't really need the tips and tricks like I did on the diesel, on the Cummins. And so I do think that is another difference, that it is a little more complicated, but I do think you can do it with all the resources out there. So I'd say doing the maintenance yourself can definitely be a big part of the equation when you're comparing the gas truck, the maintenance there, to the diesel, because from what I've heard, it seems like service centers almost have an automatic surcharge for anything diesel related when it comes to service. And so looking back to my spreadsheet here, even though it was just $1,000 over the course of 5 years, $1,000 different on the diesel here compared to the gas, I would imagine that could certainly turn into $2,000 or $3,000 difference had I taken the diesel into a dealership or a service center. Second factor that I think plays out here is my low mileage. You can see I'm basing all this on about 12,000 annual miles, and I'm just thinking if you're planning on buying secondhand or you're planning on putting considerable mileage on your HD truck, then of course you're going to have more frequent maintenance, making the difference between the gas and the diesel here more pronounced. But I would also speculate at the same time that as a diesel truck continues to go up in mileage, perhaps over 100,000 miles, that perhaps there's going to be more expensive repairs on the diesel compared to the gas. And that's just speculation, by the way. I mean, certainly there's the argument that the diesel engine is going to last longer than the gas, but the diesel repairs, they may be more expensive in the first place. So in my case, the mileage was on the lighter side there, not as high perhaps compared to others. And so I do think that tends to downplay, the difference between the two trucks in terms of the maintenance costs. And then last, I just want to point out that there is the Achilles heel. Unfortunately, the whole emissions issues on modern diesel trucks with all the DPF issues, with the check engine light coming on. And for me personally, 2 out of the 3 diesel trucks that I owned, I had emissions issues at some point that needed, cleaning. Sometimes it was false positives. Sometimes it was sensors, things like that needed to be cleaned or swapped out. Nothing too major, but that seems to be the Achilles heel for modern diesel trucks. And the good news is the government actually mandates that manufacturers cover most of that, or at least a certain part of that, under a federally mandated warranty, 8 years, 80,000 miles on that warranty. It doesn't cover everything in the emission systems, but select parts. And then otherwise, the rest is going to be covered under the basic manufacturer warranty, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, or 36 or 50,000 miles. And that's of course going to vary by brand. And at the same time, while that federally mandated warranty is nice for assurance, I think it's more about the inconvenience of it all. You know, my experience has been with the emissions issues, it's kind of like a cat and mouse game where you get the check engine light, you know, you read the code is generic or it has a dozen different culprits, and so you reset the code, you wait for it to come back on, and you see if it's the same code or if there's other codes with it, and there's just a lot of, you know, trial and error. And I'm just thinking, especially if you're going to the dealer each time because it's under warranty and you want them to deal with it, that's a lot of back and forth. And a lot of times they just kind of shrug their shoulders and they say, oh, it's a false positive, you know, they reset it, and then you're back in a few weeks. And so I really think a lot of it is just the inconvenience. And that's when I think modern diesels become less and less appealing as they get up there in mileage, because I mean, once that warranty is out, you're pretty much on your own. And so any emissions issues you have, you're going to be footing the bill for all that. And from what I've heard, those types of issues are very expensive to fix typically. All right, final thoughts. If there was one thing that I would want you to take away from this video, it would be that for me personally, I don't think diesel trucks are just drastically, you know, more expensive to maintain compared to their gas counterparts. Yes, they are more expensive to maintain, but as you saw in my case there on the spreadsheets, it really wasn't that much more compared to a gas HD truck. If I was on the fence between gas and diesel, you know, looking at the maintenance, to me, the difference is really marginal, in my opinion. I think the biggest factor to look at between gas and diesel is the actual upgrade cost with that diesel engine. You know, typically that's going to be north of $10,000 or more. To me, it's that $10,000 plus premium that really sets apart the gas from the diesel in terms of cost, in terms of expenses. In fact, next week I'm going to do a video specifically on the diesel resale argument, because unlike how the diesel maintenance argument is used to argue against diesel trucks as if they're so much more expensive to maintain, the diesel resale argument is the exact opposite, right? It's commonly used to argue in favor of the diesel HD trucks. But is the diesel resale argument actually true? And how does it play out in your wallet? Well, I'll be talking all about that in next week's video, so definitely make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you've got the notification bell turned on as well. And as always, thanks for watching.